Okej, słuchajcie, możecie mi napisać, czy mnie słyszycie. Olek, Madzia, mówię do was. Okej. Welcome to the third edition of annual Wrocław Chinese Martial Arts Congress. This edition is special not only because of the pandemic, which forced us to hold an online event, but this year we also encouraged people with other than only Chinese interests to participate. The event is an effect of the cooperation of University of Wrocław Philology Students Club, Confucius Institute at University of Wrocław, and this edition patrons Szczecin Asia Club, Mandarin Speaking Club Wrocław, and Shodan Martial Arts Club from Legnica. Thank you for your participation, and not to prolong my monologue, I'm inviting Polish Sites Director of Confucius Institute at University of Wrocław, Professor Gościwit Malinowski.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am very thankful for invitation to this conference, the third Wrocław Chinese Martial Arts Congress. And I am very happy as a director of Confucius Institute at the University of Wrocław to be a co-organizer or cooperator of this Congress. Of course, I'm also sad, not only happy, sad that we are obliged to meet only online. However, I am sure that the level of the papers and the activities concerning this Congress would be very high. So despite these pandemic situations, which not allowed us to present some performances, not allowed us organize some sport events, despite this situation, this Congress would be very fruitful and not the last Congress in our city, not the last Congress about the martial arts. I hope in future we meet once again in the normal life, but we will be wiser because of the topics of these papers, which we will be able to hear this year. So I wish you fruitful online meeting, and thank you very much for invitation.
Thank you, Professor, for opening the Congress. Now we are going to listen to Chinese site director of Confucius Institute at University of Wrocław, Professor Xia Guoxiang.
Dzień dobry. It's my honor to be invited to the third Wrocław Congress of Chinese Martial Arts. Thank you for your invitation. Dear colleagues and students, honorable Kung Fu masters, and everyone present, I'm deeply touched by your love for Chinese martial arts and expecting your discussion and demonstration. As you know, Chinese martial arts has a long history in China, and the principal function is to keep practitioners fit. I wish this Congress fruitful and great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your participation. We are glad the Chinese side of our institute supports us in conducting the event, which helps the mutual understanding and cultural exchange globally. And now I would like to invite the secretary and the main organizer of this year's edition, Dr. Stefania Skowron-Markowska.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor to meet you on our third edition of Wrocławski Kongres Chiński Sztuk Walki, Wrocław Congress of Chinese Martial Arts. Just like Mrs. Sandra said, it's an unusual edition because we don't meet in person. We just use the technology just to meet each other and to discuss about the topics that we are interested in. It's also a great honor and pleasure to inform you that it's the third time when we meet when we host a lot of great guests. For example, Professor Wojciech Cynarski, who is with us from the first edition and is one of our top specialists. And it's also a great pleasure and honor to me that to this edition joined also Professor Thomas Green from United States, from Texas University, also a great specialist. And I'm very, very happy that he's with us today. We meet, ladies and gentlemen, we meet with each other sometimes with our colleagues and other people who are interested in martial arts in dojo, during the training, exchanging the information and our experience in normal chat. This is the opportunity for us now to meet and to talk about it during the Congress. So I'm really happy and I'm really touched indeed that this edition is just happening. That's why I would like to thank at the beginning, because it's very important part, the great thanks for Mrs. Sandra and Wrocław students team from Sinological Club, because thanks to them, their organization, their skills, we've got the opportunity to meet together. So now it's time for our presentation. I hope that we will be able to talk about the things that we are interested in. We've got a lot of great specialists, so I'm sure that this time will be very fruitful and also a great pleasure for us to meet in this way and talk about the very interesting things. So enjoy, and we meet on our next presentation. Thank you.
Great. The Congress has been opened. Thank you, Director. And today is a special day because the speeches of 3 speeches which will be held today are prepared by our scientific committee. However, due to the schedule, it starts at 5:30. So we will stop here for a second and start just due to the schedule we prepared earlier so that everyone can join us at 5:30. So now we will make a short break and then go back with the first speech of Professor Thomas Green. Okay. Okay, so we are back after a short break. As I already mentioned, today's presentation are three presentations of keynote speakers. So keynote speakers are going to present 30-minute speeches. And the first one will be our special guest from the United States, Professor Thomas Green from Texas A&M University, with the topic of Asian terminology in American martial arts, form and function. Should our viewers have any questions, please write them in comments below our streaming. After the keynote speeches, we will hold a Q&A section. So, Professor, you are welcome, and you can turn on your microphone so that we can hear you.
Okay, I think I'm on, correct? Everyone can hear me?
Yes, we do.
Oh, good. All right. It's such an honor to be invited to speak with this group, and I hope I can live up to the introductions that I have gotten today. Please forgive my very poor pronunciation of both Mandarin and Cantonese, but since we are dealing with today focus on the use and misuse of language in the martial arts, I suppose mispronunciation can be included there also. The examples that I'm using are drawn from formalized martial arts as distinct from what I've called vernacular martial arts that are developed in and respond to local culture. So in some cases, people use the term elite versus village or elite versus folk. But in any case, my thesis is that in the West, Chinese and Japanese words are borrowed and generally distorted for reasons other than clear communication. Of course, there are certain concepts to a specific martial art that do not directly translate outside the original context. For example, in Japanese martial arts, the term zanshin, literally meaning remaining mind, denotes a relaxed but alert state that one achieves after properly executing a technique. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to translate into Western languages. More common, however, is the use of language other than the daily language of the group to insulate the ordinary from the extraordinary. For example, in elite contexts, the use of sacred languages in religious or magical practice may serve the same. Latin in the practice of Roman Catholicism, Hebrew in the practice of Judaism are examples. Finally, when a practice is relocated from its native context, the continued use of the original language in the changed environment attempts to instill authenticity in the transplanted practice. There are many things, of course, that attempt to do that as well. We'll discuss those later. In the practice of martial arts, the use of titles to designate rank that are borrowed or translated, quote, translated from the original context. It's a universal. There are a few exceptions, such as the use of Mr. in many American Taekwondo schools. Our consideration of this practice is limited to Chinese and Japanese martial arts. The series of titles below establishes a baseline before we proceed to a case study of something that I'm calling Dragon and Crane Fist. It's a made-up name for genuine martial art. We should begin with the terms Sifu or Shifu, master, as it's translated. In the martial arts tradition, this is a term of respect given by those who practice a martial art to those who teach them. There is a saying that one day, quote, one day as a teacher, one lifetime as a father, end quote. This is intended to emphasize the disciple's respect for a teacher. Shifu in Chinese martial tradition is distinct from Lao Shi, teacher, in that the Shifu-disciple relationship is established by means of elaborate ceremony. In this ritual, Confucian morality, based on a model of filial piety, plays an important role. Therefore, Shifu, in its original Chinese martial context, denotes not only a teacher-student relationship, but a deeper relationship modeled on the family. Teachers attain the status of the student's parents. Since this model is employed by the teacher of traditional Chinese martial arts, we analyze the development of the paradigm of this model in the master-apprentice relationship in Plum Blossom boxing. The apprenticeship ritual symbolizes the disciple becoming a member of a martial family and establishing a status with specific family rights and responsibility in a traditional family structure. Thus, we see a rite of social incorporation that is quite different from simply joining a school. The initiation ritual is divided into the following actions. Number one, the master is invited to have a seat. Number two, the master announces the beginning of the ceremony. Third, those present pay homage to the founders of the system. Fourth step, the apprentice kneels down and kowtows. In other words, kneels in a position of prostration to the teacher. The apprentice, fifth, presents a written petition to become a student to the master and recites an oath to the teacher and the system. The master accepts the petition and announces the religious disciplines of Plum Blossom boxing. As a seventh step, the apprentice kowtows to the teacher to acknowledge the acceptance of a new status. And finally, the apprentice formally expresses his gratitude to the witnesses present at the ritual. Now, the intergenerational family model is used for relationships within the boxing family. Therefore, in Cantonese, one's master's master is Sigong, or grandfather. Finally, again in Cantonese, Sijo is the general term used for all generations of ancestral masters. In the teaching context of Japanese and Japanese-inspired martial arts, as practiced in the United States, the title sensei is roughly equivalent to shifu in its simplest sense of teacher. Although the term in the US is connected exclusively with martial arts. In its native context, sensei may be used as an honorable title for anyone who instructs in any activity or skill in any setting. Outside Japan, the term has frequently been institutionalized, such as declaring anyone a sensei who attains the rank of shodan, the first level of black belt. There is also linguistic confusion about its treatment as a title, with English speakers sometimes erroneously placing it before one's name rather than after, as is proper. For example, saying Sensei Stefania rather than the grammatically correct Stefania Sensei. Other standards may be applied according to local usage, whereas in Japan, there is only one sensei in a school. Criteria in the West range from the relatively limited teacher with a master's dan degree above second dan, or the main black belt instructor in a dojo, in a school, to the very broad interpretation in which anyone with a black belt may be introduced as sensei. The label senpai, senior student, refers to the relative length of time that any two people have been members of a given organization or activity. As is the case with sensei and many aspects of transplanted East Asian disciplines, some Westerners have elected to institutionalize the terms, making senpai an official title. Soke designates the head of a family, and family originally referred to a craft or a skill organization, not a biological family. The title was developed as a merchant designation when trade guilds rose to prominence in Japan. Most guilds followed in the tradition of a family, complete with a father figure. Such figures went by various terms, including soke. The title Daisoke is a Western invention, a neologism, a new word, apparently used for the head of a martial arts organization. Dai means big, therefore it is intended to mean something like great father. Similarly, Dai Sensei, another Western invention, is apparently used for the head of a martial arts school. Like soke, this invented title assumes that terms like sensei and soke are institutionalized. Until the 20th century, many Asian martial arts recognized only two levels of rank, teacher and student, meaning apprentice or disciple. The two-tiered model continues to be employed in contemporary arts, such as plum blossom boxing, tai chi, bagua, xingyi, and others. In systems that are based on a generational model, the rank of senior student, big brother, or elder brother might also be employed. Also, many conservative Japanese warrior systems maintain other traditional means of ranking unique to the particular style. In establishing judo, Kano developed a system of ranking by means of colored belts worn with practice uniforms. The system had a rapid impact on martial arts in Japan. In Kano's ranking system and others based on it, such as karate and taekwondo, distinctions based on learning a prescribed curriculum are made between lower levels, referred to as Q class in Japanese systems, and these people at this level wear colored belts to signify rank and are distinguished from the upper levels, the grades, referred to as Dan, who wear black belts. There is considerable variation in belt color from system to system, as well as varying interpretations of the colors. In the latter 20th century, ranking systems derived from Kano's method appeared not only in Japanese-inspired systems, but in other systems that are entirely unrelated to Asian traditions. For example, in Brazilian capoeira regional, we have the cordal, which is a rope made of braided colored cords. The term dojo, Japanese, translates as a place for the practice of the way. The term, as adopted by martial arts organizations, refers to martial arts training areas in both English and Japanese. Kata translates to the English terms form or shape or mold. In the martial arts, kata are prearranged drills performed either individually or with a partner. Some practitioners have even taken to inventing their own kata, which from the perspective of traditional Japanese martial arts is very contradictory. Ki, Japanese term that translates as gather energy. Especially in Western contexts, this can also refer to a cry emitted when expelling energy with a strike. The trend of shouting the word kiya or something similar in English-speaking world does not have a clear origin and probably indicates an inherited misunderstanding. Having established definitions from Japanese and Chinese martial practice and common uses of this borrowed terminology, let us turn to an example of the use of these terms in the vocabulary of a martial art we will call dragon and crane fist. According to their oral history, and from now on I'm just giving you their oral history. According to their oral history, it is a Chinese style of kung fu. They use Cantonese terms throughout. It is a family art passed from father to son. Originally, there were no large public schools that openly taught the art. There was also no official name for the art, and the current name was chosen in the 1970s in order to avoid confusion of not having a standardized name for the art. Now, in the following, all the personal names of individuals that I'm giving are pseudonyms. They're made up names rather than using the real names of the individuals. The head of the style was trained by a man named Watanabe, whose father was Okinawan and whose mother was Chinese. It was through her side of the family that he was introduced to dragon and crane fist. Watanabe spent most of the early part of his life training in Okinawan karate. He traveled to southern China in the early 20th century to train with his maternal uncle, who was a senior student of the art. While in China, he was introduced to his uncle's teacher, who was Watanabe's great uncle. The man's name was Lo Pan, and he was head of the system at the time. Eventually, Watanabe began learning from Lopan directly and continued to do so until his teacher's death. After this, Watanabe inherited the art. When the Japanese invaded China, Watanabe was put into a foreigner's prisoner of war camp. Here, he met an American, George Harrison, who soon became Watanabe's friend and student. After the war, Harrison arranged to have Watanabe come to the United States. Harrison had begun teaching his student at a young age until he was old enough to train directly under Watanabe. And at Watanabe's death, the art passed on to George Harrison Jr. We are told that the art is based on Taoist principles. So unlike many other Chinese arts, it has no connections to the Shaolin Temple, although it is alleged to have originated in a temple which, like Shaolin, was destroyed by, quote, the emperor. We're never told what emperor. The past practitioners of the art have been encouraged to incorporate portions of other martial arts into Dragon Fist, which marks it as eclectic. It picks and chooses from many different arts. Each acquired portion was evaluated and, as necessary, modified to fit the existing curriculum and structure of the art. In addition to this, masters in the art also created their own kata to fit within the framework of the style. Not only the physical elements of the art reflect borrowings from Chinese and Japanese Okinawan sources, so too does the terminology, which is a random mixture of Cantonese and Japanese terms and concepts. One of the most striking is that the first 10 forms are called kara-fu katas. Kara-fu. The ranking system also represents the principles of random selections of terms and the symbolism of belt collars. The ranking system, like many other elements, is fluid and changeable. For example, at one point, the current head of the system declared that members of the art could no longer count in English when in class, but must learn to count from 1 to 10 in Japanese. This is particularly strange, owing to the fact that students are told when they enter the study area, they are, quote, in China. In common with virtually all arts that employ the belt ranking system, the novice begins with a black belt on his or her practice uniform. The Japanese term hyu is never used. The color white represents purity in the sense of what would be called in English slang a clean slate or a blank white piece of paper. There's also the belief that with diligent practice over time, the white belt will be transformed to black. The folk tradition claims that the belt has a magical quality and should never be washed, or the knowledge will be washed out along with the dirt. The next belt color is red, which signifies sweating blood. The belt is not awarded strictly according to mastery of a curriculum. Rather, it is awarded by enduring a grueling physical test designed to make the novice fail and resign as a student. If the student agrees to take another even harder test, the belt is awarded. The next color, blue, signifies loyalty, that one is, according to English slang, true blue. And true blue means faithful, according to American slang. Again, the test is not of one's physical mastery. In this case, the candidate is given a dilemma that entails either disobeying a direct order from a superior or violating an ethical principle of the system. To pass, the student confesses a violation, which makes that student loyal. True blue, in other words. The next color, green, is awarded when the student demonstrates an ability to grow both in terms of the mastery of the physical techniques and in one's ability to teach the curriculum to less advanced students. Brown, the next level, represents maturity, the growth of the qualities seen at green belt level. At the level of black belt, Japanese and Chinese terms for rank are introduced based randomly on family criteria or length of time. It is claimed that the Kung Fu, as distinct from the Kara Fu forms, using the Japanese term katas when they talk about them, are introduced. As was the case with the term Kyu, the term Dan, as in Shodan, is never introduced. On passing the test for the first level black belt, the student is referred to as senpai. As previously discussed, this term is Japanese, which is ironic because this is the level at which a Chinese Kung Fu curriculum is said to be introduced. Thus, contrary to the usual designation of this title by length of membership, the rank of senpai is based on knowledge of the curriculum. So it's possible for a physically gifted student to be labeled elder sibling relative to a student who has more years of membership in the art. He or she, senpai, remains at senpai rank through second degree black belt, through Nidan. In order to attain the third black belt, the candidate must master physical skills and write a thesis relevant to the system. Upon successfully completing these requirements, the candidate is promoted to sensei. Contrary to at least some of the patterns discussed above, there may be more than one sensei in a group, just as there may be more than one sandan, third level black belt, in other clubs. Attaining the fifth black belt, Godan, brings another title and a language change to the rank of Sifu. Along with this comes an association with the Chinese concept of a familial tie. This is very loose association, though. There's no formalization of this family bond as was described for the plum blossom initiation. The promotion to Sifu entitles the designation of Sifu's teacher to become Sigong. During the field work with this group, an alliance was formed with another system who introduced the term Soke for the founder of the Allied system and put it in the vocabulary of Dragon Fist. In an odd linguistic twist, which was probably due to a total misunderstanding of the Japanese language and martial designations, the current head of the Allied system, who is the son of the founder, is called Daisoke, which is interpreted as successor or inheritor. One final example, Osu or Us illustrates the misinterpretation of an appropriated term. Os or Osu is an utterance found in some martial arts groups, mostly Japanese, but certainly not Okinawan, and largely outside of Japan. The etymology of this word, the origin of this word is uncertain, though there are certain folk explanations. Some say it derives from osu, meaning to push, in reference to difficult training. Anthropologist Wojciech Cynarski concurs with the previous etymology and notes that it is an endorsement in Japanese karate as practiced in the West. He notes it is similar to a military response after receiving an order. Us, as Professor Stefania has said, is very popular in Poland, I'm told, because it makes a practitioner, makes a student feel very Japanese. In Dragon Fist, us, also uso or hus, is put into a variety of uses and given a variety of translations, such as yes and I accept. The term is also used as a power shout, equivalent to the Japanese kiai, for delivering a physical technique, and undoubtedly also serves the function of making students feel more Japanese. Now, an enduring problem in the natural history of intangible cultural phenomena, such as folk dance or martial culture, is establishing authenticity. The issue of authenticity is compounded when a practice is relocated from its native context. The group draws on a variety of devices to ground the transplanted art. Among them are costumes, as with the adoption of variants of the judogi by Japanese karate and Korean taekwondo. Traditional histories, whether they are verifiable or invented, are offered to reveal and substantiate the roots of a practice. The history of Dragon Fist offers an excellent example of such an invented narrative. As mentioned earlier, the use of the original language in the new context attempts to instill authenticity to the transplanted practice. Moreover, sharing these and similar practices creates a bond among group members. Additionally, the use of a language other than the daily language of the group, as well as other special behavior, makes of the practice area what anthropologist Victor Turner calls a liminal zone. In other words, it's a zone that's between two normal states, the original state and the state outside the world of the dojo. In the case of Asian disciplines practiced in the West, the practice area is not the ordinary territory one has left on the outside, nor is it the world which birthed the art. One is not, despite the assertion of students of Dragon Fist, quote, in China. Finally, conscious intent is not likely to be at work in Western martial organizations' use of Chinese and Japanese terminology. This assumption aside, that there's not conscious intent, the consideration of the symbolic dimension of linguistic borrowing reveals utilitarian functions for the borrowing organization. They find many useful functions for these terms. Thank you very much for your attention. Again, I'm honored to be here today.
Thank you, Professor, for the speech and for your substantive help during the Congress preparations. Now it's time for Dr. Stefania Skowron from University of Wrocław, who will speak about Hong Kong female martial artists, forgotten and if it's forgotten story. And moreover, I remind you to ask questions in the comments below the streaming so that we can, our speakers, we answer them later. Okay, so Doctor, we invite you to turn on your microphone and camera.
Okay, just give me a second. I will start with the presentation. Okay. Please let me know if you see the presentation.
Actually, we see your screen, but it's your browser screen, not the presentation.
Okay. Give me a second because something happened. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, now it works. Great.
Oh, great. Great, thank you. Okay, it's a great pleasure for me to present my research, and actually I would say a short investigation because it's not a typical research work, let's say, but it's already a subject from my personal interest, and it's related about the Hong Kong female martial artists, about the women, about the ninja, the women who are fighting together with men in many movies that we probably got the possibility to see. I mean the old wuxia movies from the Hong Kong great movie industry. When you would notice that there are a lot of men, fighting men, but there are also some women who are a very skillful martial artist. And I was trying to check if we still remember about those women, if we can recognize them in the modern movies, or we see the impact of their activity in the modern movies. So that's why the title of my presentation is Hong Kong Female Martial Artists, Forgotten Story. Forgotten or not, we will see. So this is the short plan of the presentation, the short introduction, and I'd like to also accent the phenomenon of Hong Kong action cinema, wuxia movies, which we all know that is a very important factor for the development of the action cinema, especially when we are talking about the kung fu movies and kicking monks and flying, kicks and so on. I would like also to present a short selected fighting woman biographies, and I've got some difficulties with choosing the best one, because there are so many interesting, actresses, so many wonderful martial artists that I have to choose only the 3 examples because, we've got a short time to present all of them. That's why I choose Cheng Pei, Angela Mao Ying, Li Li as, let's say, the most topic and the most interesting persons for me. I would like to also show you why I think that these women are really great warriors, but also got a great impact for the modern movies and the modern wushu stories. And just like I mentioned, I would like to also notice if they are still got a huge influence, if they are still present in pop culture, or if they still practicing. That's why I said, just like I said, it's an investigation, not a typical research. Here we've got a screenshot with Shishu. It's one of the, let's say, the top actress from the movie Mask of Vengeance. And now you can see that's one of the most, let's say, typical visions of fighting women. Okay, Hong Kong action cinema, the new direction for the development of action movies. We know that this is, let's say, a milestone for some movies, especially the kicking movies, the wushu movies. We know that some, let's say, great productions, like great producers, like, for example, Shaw Brothers or Orange Sky Golden Harvest still has a huge impact, because we remember all those movies, we remember the stories, we know the context, that this is just like I said, the milestones for the modern movies and for the martial arts artists. We also know that there are some, let's say, the typical waves of movies that those producers were created. Let's say the 3 main waves of movies related to kung fu movies, related to folk tales, and related to the modern martial arts and, let's say, more acrobatic martial arts. Of course, we are not. This presentation is not about the history of Hong Kong action cinema, but it's worth to say that the peak of popularity of Hong Kong production falls of the years 1960, 1990s, and that's why I choose also the women that I presented before, because they've got the strong, let's say, the peak of their popularity was also in these years. We also know that Hong Kong produced let's say, some superstars and super directors. The superstars like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, Jet Li, or someone whom we all know. We also know the the directors like, for example, John Woo. But yes, there is one more question. Where are the Hong Kong female warriors?
Excuse me, Doctor,
Yes?
if I can interrupt you, because
Yeah.
we are not sure if you are showing other slides of your presentation.
Yes, it's the
Because-
second slide.
We see the first one.
Oh, wow. Okay, give me a second. I don't know what's going on. Oh, it was working. Sorry. Okay, you see this one, the third.
Yeah, I see it on Zoom. However, I need to check it on the streaming.
Okay, it should be Hong Kong action cinema slide.
Okay, please wait a second because there is
Yes,
a short
sure.
delay. Okay, a few seconds more. Okay, it works.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so my question and also the point of my presentation is, where are the Hong Kong female warriors? Are they still in, some popular space, or are they hidden? Do we remember about them, or we just, remember about the Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan? So actually, I think that most of you recognize the women on this picture. Some of them are, let's say, from the first wave, and it's about Cheng Pei, sorry, from that she's in the photo, starting from the bottom. Angela Miao, Zhang Ziyi, Michelle Yeoh, Cynthia Rothrock. I think that some of us can recognize all of these women. And I also was thinking that, let's say, there are some, basic women, basic figures in martial arts studies, martial arts movies that have a really strong influence for all of these women, for artists, for the new, let's say, the direction of developing. And we can start from, let's say, the first wave, those three women that I choose at the beginning, to show the huge impact and influence for women in Asian martial arts movies, but also in the movies from, let's say, the United States, that they are also based from the Chinese martial arts and the Chinese vision of martial arts. For me, the best example for this situation is Cynthia Rothrock. She was creating, let's say, a role of China O'Brien, a very famous policewoman who is practicing Chinese martial arts, and she's very skillful and can use it during her everyday work. So let's say from the beginning, for me, the beginning of the Nusha from the woman in martial arts in Hong Kong is Cheng Pei. I choose her because she's also she's got the position of queen of the kung fu. Let's say shortly, she is the queen of kung fu. She's also first ever female action hero. She also produced a lot of. Sorry, I've got some problems speaking. She's a Chinese actress that appeared in a number of martial arts movies, working in Hong Kong in 1960s and 1970s. And for example, the most, let's say, the influential kung fu movies for me, and also for the Chinese cinema and Hong Kong cinema, is the movie Come Drink With Me, where she's performing the Golden Swallow, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where she's performing Jade Fox. These movies are very important for me because I'm going then to return to them and to show you the connection. I don't want to show you all of the elements of her biography because it's not important. For me, it's also important that she was voted the Queen of the Swords in a poll organized by the Hong Kong press. This is very important because the sword is a very demanding weapon. It's not easy to perform, to use the sword. So when we see the situation that woman is performing with the sword, she's a master of the sword. Now we can see that this actress, this person is someone special. Here we can see, for example, one of the scenes. This scene is also important, and I want to return to this scene in the further plan of the presentation. And I will also show you the short quotation about her possibilities, her skills. Her performances are characterized by grace, agility, and dignity, which undoubtedly came from her background in ballet, music, and Chinese dance. A Hong Kong critic wrote in 1980s, she is considered to be one of the best actresses to have emerged from the martial arts cinema. And also another one, Ron saw me on the stage doing a Chinese folk dance and thought from the movements that I made I could be a very good martial arts actress, she said in interview. So her unusual skills were noticed. She was one of the, let's say, the best person who will be able to perform in Shaw Brothers movie. Just like I said, the scene here in a restaurant, in Chinese tea house, sorry, not restaurant, is very important because I will show in the next stage that, let's say, this kind of scene and this kind of, let's say, the actress play will have a continuation. The second person is Angela Mao Ying. I'm sure that we all can recognize her as, let's say, a sister of Bruce Lee in The Enter of the Dragon. She's a Taiwanese actress, but I choose her as, let's say, a Hong Kong actress because she was participating in all huge enterprises of Shaw Brothers and let's say the Hong Kong producers. She also got a perfect nickname. She was nicknamed with Lady Whirlwind or Lady Kung Fu, thanks to her skills. Just like I said, she was also considered to be the female version of Bruce Lee. What is one of the most important thing, and it's good to notice that she came from a family associated with the tradition of Beijing opera. That was quite common for the young ladies, young actress, that if they have a roots in traditional Beijing opera, it's easy for them to start to cooperate with Shaw Brothers. They were looking for the women, the young girls or person who are just, skillful, who've got the basics that they can develop in the further years. She was, just like I said, also an actress of opera, and she attended a ballet lesson. That also was very helpful. What distinguished her that she was also trained in Hapkido and other martial arts, and that's why it was easy for her to be a partner of the productions like Enter the Dragon. Her filmography is about 38 movies. It's not a lot if we can compare it with the others Hong Kong actress, but it's still a lot. Here we've got some photos from the movies of Angela Mao. Two of them are related with Hapkido movie, Lady Kung Fu Hapkido, and this photo with the blue suit is one of the most recognized photo of her. It's related with Enter of the Dragon and the great story of the Bruce Lee. This is the fragment of interview with Angela Mao, because her story it's unusual. She's not practicing now. She's let's say a housewife, owner of restaurant, and she's still curious about the reaction of other people for her past. Because some people still want to visit her restaurant and to see the Angela Mao, the sister of Bruce Lee. Yes, so it's for her it's something new. But there is one more thing. In wuxia movies or in Hong Kong cinema, the women are usually, let's say, something extra to the male roles, to the main actress, like. For example, playing with the Bruce Lee makes you always, let's say, a person on the a shadow of Bruce Lee. You will not be as good as Bruce Lee. It's of course impossible. So one of the her great fans, and also author of a book about the films of Fury, asked her during the interview about her position in the macho men of martial arts Hong Kong movie, and there is a short part of this interview. Many things, he explained. Hong Kong had lots of machismo there. Women were considered J vases. They didn't speak on screen. They were considered decoration. And Angela Ma answered, I was never anybody Jade ways. So she was, sure that her skills are just her extra advantage. So she doesn't need to be anybody Jade ways. She also answered, this is not a gender situation, she said with a baffled expression. I just played myself. I'm strong and I'm powerful. That is how I became the most important female kung fu actress of my. Here's also another part of the interview, so you can check the one interesting thing that her pay wasn't a very, very high, but her experience was worth it to be a partner of Bruce Lee. The third person is Lily Bourne. She's not well known, or maybe she's not so popular like Chen Pei or Angela Mao, but she's also a great actress, and also one of those person who is worth to mention because she also was a dancer, classical ballet and martial arts performers. What is one of the most interesting things is that she debuted at the age of 14, so she was extremely young. It's easy to see that those girls have to start very early because the career during the martial arts movies in those time was very short. You had to, start very early because then you will be able just to use your skills, but you have to be, the best one as soon as you can. Her filmography is, huge. It's 102 movies plus over 200 TV series. So we can see how a lot of work and a lot of, skills she had to have to perform in all of these, things. And there's one of the, let's say, slides about the photos with Lily. Let's say the one of the most important thing for all of this, actress and all of the situation is that all of the women were playing typical roles. Typical, let's say, Shanyu, woman warriors roles. And those, sorry. Those roles were doing the special patterns. Those patterns are very related with traditional Chinese culture, Confucianism, and the system of classification women and men in the Chinese society. So that's not the typical rules that we can understand them. For us, they are, let's say, something very Chinese, let's say, or very Hong Kongese. But for us now, when we see the progress and we see the change of those movies, we see that women that I choose as examples, they are just, let's say, the three waves of women that were also changing the point of view of for these traditional values. Just like I mentioned here, in traditional wuxia film, the female characters are usually shown as dependent on men. We will see that in the, let's say, the movie like The Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the situation is different. It's not just a simple women that agree for everything. This women role are changing. They become most powerful heroine, not only the jade vase, like Angela Mao say. Starting from the very traditional position in the first wave of Chinese Kung Fu, we also will see progress. Easy to notice that this position of the woman in these movies is also changing. We can say that it's more feministic, but it's not true. It's not. It's something in the middle. They are changing. They've got more, let's say, they are more powerful. They see their own role in all of the process. So I was thinking, forgotten or not? Fortunately, not forgotten. Here is the picture that I'm sure that you recognize. There are the three generations of martial artists from Crouching Tiger and Hidden Dragon. For me, it's one of the best examples that we can see the evolution, the great influence and the sisterhood, actually. Between the three generation represented by Chen Pei, by Michelle Yeoh, and Zhang Ziyi, we see the evolution and a huge tribute to evolution of female warriors. We see that those three women are also representing three different points of view. Michelle Yeoh is in the middle. She's playing I forgot. Yuxin Lian. She's Yuxin Lian in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And Yuxin Lian is a person who is in the middle. He believes in traditional values, but she's also a warrior, so she has to be in the middle. Chen Pei is playing Jade Fox, so she's, I can say, actually, I'm thinking that she is most feministic person in this movie. And Zhang Ziyi is the youngest one, but she's with conflict in her heart. She sees those previous two generations, but she also can choose in her own way. So that's why I believe that this movie is, let's say, a hallmark, a milestone to show that the generation of the women playing in Newxia and Wuxia movies found the best way to see and to share the connection and to share the knowledge and experience from the martial arts movies. And I also noticed that there are some inspiration during the Chang Pei movies and the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon scenes. Just like I said, I believe that this is a kind of tribute for Chang Pei because, for example, we can see it in the very similar scenes, very common similarities. We see, for example, the scenes where Chang Pei on the first movies and Zhang Ziyi is sitting in the tea house, and then they will fight one against all, and of course they will win. So this is one of the, let's say, the situation when the authors of the movie use the patterns that were very, let's say, specific for the basic one, for the classical wushu movies, and use it in modern super productions. For me, it was also a nice, surprise to discover the Quentin Tarantino's wuxia inspiration. Of course, we all know the Kill Bill movie because it's very, it's famous and it's Quentin Tarantino, so everybody know it. And I also found some in sources some information about his inspiration. For example, the 5 Deadly Venoms, where this motif was used by Quentin Tarantino when she showed the Shaw Brothers Kung Fu classic movies and used it from one of the movie. Also, for example, she used some motifs like this one with the swinging ball and chain, striking during the Kill Bill movie. And this motif is used from the Angela Mao's movie. So he's one of those persons who noticed that he can also find and he can be inspired, but some patterns, some elements from the movies, from all the wuxia movies where women were the first and the best heroes. Also, let's say the first photo which showed Uma Thurman practicing a sword, for me is also a very significant picture because, just like I said, wuxia movies were usually performed, were using actors that were using the sword, especially the women. So for me, it's, let's say, the pure inspiration for the wuxia women also in this movie. And just like I said, Angela Mao is still one of those persons who can say that, she's still a superstar, but for example, actually for her it's not a very important thing. She believes that her past, her being a great actress, being a martial arts artist is one of the, let's say, the stage of her life. So for her, being a superstar is the past, just like I said. But many people still remember about her. Just like I also mentioned, a lot of fans are trying to find her restaurant. She's just like I checked. She's got a free restaurant. One of them is in Queens. So she's also surprised that some people just simply want to meet her to excuse me. to enter to the restaurant to see her, and wow, it's Angela Mao. This is Bruce Lee. Sister. She was, performing in The Enter of the Dragon. I also checked the situation, the modern situation of the rest of the actors, and they are still active. They are still active. They are playing in many movies, just like Chang Mei. Yes, we saw her in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Now I know that she is a matchmaker in Mulan new version. So she is still active. For me, this woman is, let's say, a giant between the Chinese martial artist, not only the woman, but martial artists at all. So I also noticed that for them, it's not the end. They are still continue their work, their passion, because you have to be very, you have to really love your passion. You have to really love your job if you still want to practicing and perform in martial arts movies. So for me, their story is not forgotten. They are still fighting. They are still showing that they've got something to offer for the new generation that they can offer and share. So there are some sources that you can use if you want to discover more interesting facts from their lives. I would also encourage you to see some old movies. I didn't put it in the sources because there's too many movies that I would like to put it. So the best way is just to check the filmography of the woman I was talking about and enjoy those movies. Try to discover the new future and the modern situation of fighting women from Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech and for your help during the Congress organization. Unfortunately, the last keynote speaker can't be with us in person right now, but Professor Wojciech Cynarski from University of Rzeszów prepared a presentation on the topic of martial artists as a tourist attraction, and we are going to listen to his recording in Polish. However, our translators provided English subtitles to it. Professor will be available later, I hope so. So I remind you to ask questions below the streaming. Okay, and we can start presenting the recording.
Serdecznie witam szanownych Państwa. Ladies and gentlemen, it will be about martial arts master and attractiveness of the person for martial arts tourism. Firstly for students and next for tourism of martial arts. O atrakcyjności turystycznej mistrza sztuk walki. Rozpocznijmy od krótkiego wprowadzenia. Kulturowy fenomen sztuk walki obejmuje zarówno obszary kultury masowej, to jest kino sztuk walki, bardziej ogólnie film akcji, także komiks, gry komputerowe, kultury sportowej, tu rzecz dotyczy rywalizacji w sportach walki, kultury fizycznej i zdrowotnej, w tym także turystyki i rekreacji fizycznej. Na wyobraźnię człowieka XXI wieku wciąż oddziałuje archetypowy mistrz sztuk walki i jego niemal magiczne umiejętności. Czy możemy rozpatrywać jego osobę mistrza i mistrzostwo w aspekcie atrakcyjności turystycznej jako magnesu przyciągającego pasjonatów? Wszakże w ogólnej teorii sztuk i sposobów walki, General Theory of Fighting Arts, GTFA, ów mistrz traktowany jest jako dzieło sztuki. Tej sztuki, którą on sam kultywuje. Perspektywę teoretyczną lub ramy naukowe dla podjętych tu rozważań współtworzą łącznie i komplementarnie GTFA i koncepcja teoretyczna turystyki sztuk walki, pojęcie uczestnictwa w kulturze według socjologii kultury i socjologii czasu wolnego. Mam tu na uwadze monografię dotyczącą turystyki sztuk walki mojego autorstwa, podręcznik akademicki Socjologia kultury według Golki, mój podręcznik socjologii czasu wolnego, dalej antropologiczna i systemowa teoria turystyki i rekreacji. Tu mam na myśli prace współautorskie z Kazimierzem Obodyńskim. Wskazana koncepcja, czy wskazane koncepcje i ujęcia teoretyczne opisane są w tychże właśnie pozycjach literatury przedmiotu. Ufam, że uda się opublikować pełne teksty naszych tutaj wystąpień i Państwo będą mogli sięgnąć także do tych właśnie przytaczanych publikacji. Warto jeszcze ustalić wstępnie, kto jest mistrzem. Mistrz jako kategoria pojęciowa jest od wielu lat analizowany w badaniach fenomenu sztuk walki. Na gruncie GTFA stosujemy definicję, zacytuję dosłownie: Master in martial arts, 1. The founder of a school or a succeeding teacher. 2. Someone who knows the whole system and educational program of that school. 3. The holder of a high rank, for instance, 8 to 10 dan or toan, duan in a martial art. 4. A sports champion. However, the master title, or even more so, grandmaster, refers only to martial arts. To z pracy współautorskiej Cynarski i Skowron, 2014 rok, strona 63, artykuł opublikowany w 14 tomie IDO Movement for Culture. Czyli może to być twórca szkoły sztuk walki, chodzi o mistrza, lub jej legalny sukcesor, nauczyciel, który zna cały system, posiadacz najwyższych stopni, licencji lub tytułów mistrzowskich. Czempion sportowy jest osobną kategorią pojęciową, która odnosi się do sportów walki. Mistrzostwo na drodze sztuk walki odnosi się nie tylko do najwyższych technicznych umiejętności, ale też do dojrzałości duchowej człowieka, jego poziomu moralnego, wiedzy, umiejętności pedagogicznych lub także organizacyjnych. Jest też oceną całokształtu dokonań. Droga do mistrzostwa w sztukach walki badana jest na gruncie nauk o kulturze fizycznej jako forma rozwoju progresywnego, funkcja aktywności i kreatywności, efekty długoletniego procesu treningowego i badana jest wieloaspektowo. Osiągnięciu tegoż mistrzostwa sprzyjają zwłaszcza takie okoliczności, jak nauka pod okiem autentycznego mistrza. Aby go spotkać, adepci sztuk walki podejmują podróże, zwane turystyką sztuk walki. Powoduje to wyjazdy nawet do odległych krajów, choć w niektórych przypadkach wybitnego mistrza spotkać można względnie blisko. Z drugiej strony ten właśnie mistrz przyciąga uczniów, owych turystów sztuk walki. Autor, to ja, bazuje tu zasadniczo na 3 metodach badań jakościowych. Analitycznej, to analiza treści literatury przedmiotu, analizie treści przekazów masowych, co dotyczy filmu, książki, czasopism popularyzatorskich i treści internetowych, oraz na własnej długoletniej obserwacji uczestniczącej w środowisku sztuk walki od roku 1976. VII. I teraz jakie są te wyniki naukowych poszukiwań, gdy chodzi na przykład o kryteria atrakcyjności turystycznej mistrza? Analogicznie do wskaźników uczestnictwa w kulturze, w przypadku sztuk walki uwzględnić należy częstotliwość kontaktu z kulturą, w tym wypadku z mistrzem i jego sztuką walki. Ponadto długotrwałość relacji nauczyciel-uczeń. Z drugiej strony dla turystyki niebagatelne znaczenie ma ilość uczniów odwiedzających mistrza w określonym przedziale czasu. Łącznie może to być liczba studentów turystów w roku oraz lata współpracy mistrza z uczniem, czyli wielokrotność przyjazdów. Funkcją sławy, popularności lub mody na daną sztukę walki jest liczba turystów, uczniów przybywających na przykład do szkół karate na Okinawie, do szkół Muay Thai w Tajlandii lub zwłaszcza do ośrodka Shaolin w Dengfeng w Chinach. Liczne szkoły karate na Okinawie, wyspie narodzenia się karate, mają niewielu miejscowych uczniów, lecz trafiają tam liczne grupy turystów. W przypadku sławnego klasztoru Shaolin jest to wręcz masowa turystyka. Popularne stały się udziały w seminariach szkoleniowych aikido i krav magi, wymuszone przepisami awansowymi tychże fighting arts. Z racji mody na BJJ, brazylijskie jiu-jitsu i MMA, tak zwane mieszane sztuki walki, popularne są szkolenia ze specjalistami tychże, przy czym specjalistów od samego MMA należy nazwać raczej trenerami niż mistrzami sztuk walki w ich tradycyjnym rozumieniu. Wciąż modne są wyjazdy do Brazylii dla capoeiry. Z kolei na tak zwane staże międzynarodowe do Francji każdego roku zapraszani są mistrzowie nauczyciele z Azji Wschodniej, których nazwiska przyciągają europejskich pasjonatów sztuk walki. Do szkoły mistrza Lothara Zibera autor trafił już jako instruktor kilku sztuk walki i posiadacz czarnych pasów. Było to w roku 1992. Od tamtego czasu stale i regularnie odwiedza on tę monachijską szkołę dla dalszych studiów sztuk walki, zwłaszcza jiu-jitsu i karate, ido i jaido. Oczywiście chodzi o mnie. Drodzy Państwo, jest to więc prawie 30 lat, jak dotąd, praktycznych studiów i współpracy pod okiem tegoż wybitnego mistrza, posiadacza najwyższych stopni i tytułów mistrzowskich w kilku sztukach walki. Trudno ocenić, czy większa jest atrakcyjność tego mistrza, do którego wciąż trafia uczeń już wysoko zaawansowany, czy jednak ten, który ma wielu uczniów, ale czy potrafił doprowadzić ich do wysokiego poziomu? Czy większą wagę ma 20-krotny przyjazd jednego ucznia, czy jednokrotny przyjazd 20 uczniów? Zasadniczo sława przyciąga uczniów. To też mistrzowie starają się zdobywać dobrą sławę, pracując na markę swojego nazwiska. Pomniki, obrazy i zdjęcia. Drodzy Państwo, sława mistrza przekładana jest na atrakcyjność turystyczną miejsca. Jeśli w dojo mistrza Kenji Tomikiego na Uniwersytecie Waseda w Tokio do dziś znajdują się pamiątki po nim, jest to wykorzystywane dla ukazania historyczności tej sali ćwiczeń. Duchy dawnych mistrzów współtworzą ducha tego miejsca. W kilku miejscach w Japonii stoją pomniki profesora Jigoro Kano, wielce zasłużonego dla edukacyjnego wykorzystania sztuk walki. Mistrz Kano jest swego rodzaju patronem badań nad sztukami walki i sportami walki w Japonii. Na zdjęciach widzą Państwo fragment dojo na Uniwersytecie Waseda, a na zdjęciu obok pomnik profesora Kano przy Uniwersytecie w Tsukubie. Z kolei zdjęcia Bruce'a Lee sąsiadują ze zdjęciami praktyków długiej pięści Shaolin Kung Fu, na przykład w hotelu Shaolin w Dengfeng, niedaleko ośrodka Shaolin. Jego sylwetka i sława służą tu promocji miejsca żyjącego z turystyki sztuk walki, pomimo że Lee nie odwiedził nigdy tego klasztoru. Żył i działał głównie w Hongkongu i w Seattle w Stanach Zjednoczonych. To też w Hongkongu ma on swój pomnik, jak tu na zdjęciu. Jest też ikoną środowiska sztuk walki w USA, ponieważ system Tao Jeet Kune Do stworzył on podczas pobytu w Stanach Zjednoczonych. Zdjęcie z Hongkongu. Drodzy Państwo, zdjęcia mistrzów sztuk walki oraz bohaterów filmowych kina sztuk walki wykorzystywane są dla promocji różnych odmian sztuk walki. Kraje, dla których jest to składnik narodowego dziedzictwa kultury, promują swe sztuki walki nawet na znaczkach pocztowych i monetach. Czy więc dany mistrz sztuk walki nie jest także dobrem kulturowym? Jednak w przypadku krajów zachodnich i uprawianych tu sztuk walki, o najczęściej azjatyckiej proweniencji, władze państwowe i samorządowe nieszczególnie troszczą się o tych mistrzów. Są to więc często pasjonaci żyjący skromnie, powszechnie mało znani, posiadający w swej opiece nieliczne grupy uczniów. Pośmiertna legenda, drodzy Państwo, Szanowni Państwo, niektórzy mistrzowie odchodzą szerzej nieznani lub zapomniani. Ci, którzy za sprawą własnej skutecznej promocji lub popularności uzyskanej z pomocą uczniów zyskali sławę, znajdują swe miejsce w opisach faktograficznych lub w pośmiertnej legendzie. Historykowi przychodzi porównywać liczne wypowiedzi różnych autorów, często zupełnie niekoherentne, zwykle wzajemnie sprzeczne. Biografie legendarne są tymi zwykle ubarwionymi. Opisy książkowe, a zwłaszcza treści internetowe, wymagają krytycznej analizy. Przykładowo opisy cudów twórcy nowoczesnego aikido Morihei'a Ueshiby, jak znikanie i temu podobne paranormalne zdolności, są zdecydowanie mało wiarygodne. Muzea sztuk walki przedstawiają materialne świadectwa, artefakty, na przykład tradycyjną broń i inne sprzęty, stroje, dokumenty. Na przykład, gdy dotyczy to Bruce'a Lee. Mam na myśli The Wing Look Museum of the Asian Pacific American Experience w Seattle. To jest oczywiście dużo bardziej wiarygodne. Funkcję muzeum mogą też pełnić sale ćwiczeń, jak pokazana wcześniej sala Uniwersytetu Waseda. Zwłaszcza sale w wiekowych i wielowiekowych szkołach sztuk walki. Wówczas dokonania i sława mistrza przyczyniają się do turystycznej atrakcyjności miejsca jego nauczania. Taka szkoła sztuk walki jest właściwie gotowym muzeum, które wszakże w wielu przypadkach nadal normalnie funkcjonuje. Ostrożnie należy traktować opisy twórców poszczególnych szkół i stylów. Ich legenda wzmacnia bowiem funkcjonowanie szkoły przez kolejne pokolenia. To też bywa ubarwiana lub pomijane są elementy mniej chwalebne. Niekiedy jednak jest to sława w pełni zasłużona. Przykładowo, twórca funkcjonującej do dziś, a założonej w XV wieku szkoły sztuk walki Tenchin Shoden Katori Shintoryu, mistrz Choisai Iizasa Yenao, żył w latach 1387 do 1488, zasłynął nie tylko wielkimi umiejętnościami, ale też wiedzą i mądrością, zrównoważeniem emocjonalnym i pokojowym usposobieniem. Kolejne przykłady. Przeanalizujmy wybrane przykłady mistrzów i ich atrakcyjności turystycznej. Będą to przykłady z Chin, Japonii i Europy. Dotyczy to bądź legendarnych już mistrzów, bądź obecnie wciąż aktywnych. Mistrz Chen Wangting uważany jest za twórcę stylu Chen Tai Chi Chuan. Był on dowódcą wojsk prowincji i specjalistą znanych ówcześnie technik walki. Specjalizował się we władaniu halabardą. Prawdopodobnie uprawiane dziś formy Tai Chi Chuan rodziny Chen pochodzą od tegoż mistrza. Preferował on stosowanie niskich pozycji i skoordynowaną pracę całym ciałem. Efektem ewolucji stylu Chen była unikalna kompilacja ćwiczeń energetycznych Qigong pod poetycką nazwą rozwijanie jedwabnego kokonu oraz form bojowych zawierających w sobie także dynamiczne uderzenia. Od stylu Chen wywodzą się inne uprawiane dziś style Tai Chi Chuan, jak zwłaszcza popularny styl Yang, stworzony w XIX wieku. Ród Chen do dziś naucza swego stylu, a Zhenjiagou jest miejscem pielgrzymek, pasjonatów, którzy pragną zobaczyć to miejsce i zrealizować tam u źródeł swe praktyczne studia Chen Tai Chi Chuan, w tym także Qigong. W Hongkongu popularność Bruce'a Lee oraz jego nauczyciela, wielkiego mistrza Ip Mana, pracuje dziś na korzyść funkcjonującej tam szkoły i organizacji Wing Chun Kung Fu mistrza Leung Pinga. Współpracuje z nim niemiecki mistrz Kate Kernspecht, który także potrafi ściągnąć na swe międzynarodowe seminaria setki i tysiące uczniów. Organizacja EFTO, European Wing Chun Organization, jest jedną z największych komercyjnych firm w Europie zajmujących się sztukami walki. EFTO organizuje między innymi duże coroczne seminaria w Hockenheim w Niemczech, jak tu na zdjęciu. Grandmaster Kernspecht to 10. stopień mistrzowski Wing Chun. W oparciu o nauki kilku swoich mistrzów rozwija dziś własny, wewnętrzny styl Wing Chun. Na zdjęciu właśnie profesor Kernspecht demonstruje podstawowe ćwiczenia. Kernspecht wzbogacił Wing Chun o koncepcję z I Chuan Kung Fu, odnoszącą się do zamiaru, idei i umysłu. Tenże mistrz potrafi zgromadzić w dobie pandemii kilkadziesiąt osób z wielu krajów świata na swych zdalnych warsztatach realizowanych przez Zoom Video Communication. A na zdjęciu to jest jeszcze praktyka w bezpośrednim kontakcie przed kilku laty. Tam także Cynarski jest tuż obok na drugim planie. Szanowni Państwo, wspomniany wyżej mistrz Jigoro Kano jest nie tylko twórcą judo Kodokan i popularnego dziś w skali globalnej judo sportowego, ale też współtwórcą idei dzisiejszego budo. Chodzi o zespół sztuk walki jako systemów edukacyjnych. Stąd pomniki mistrza Kano w Tokio i Tsukubie, niesłabnący autorytet w środowisku, zwłaszcza w Japonii, oraz rozwijanie jego koncepcji pedagogicznych przez dzisiejszych kontynuatorów. Funkcjonuje wciąż Instytut Kodokan, Muzeum Judo Kodokan, liczne fundacje i stowarzyszenia. Do Kodokanu pielgrzymują wielokrotnie zawodnicy i trenerzy z wielu krajów świata dla sprawdzenia umiejętności techniczno-taktycznych w zawodach i sparingach, dla pozyskania nowych umiejętności praktycznych i wiedzy. Nie jest to już stricte wyjazd do mistrza, ale do szkoły, w której duch mistrza Kano i innych wielkich mistrzów wciąż żyje. Tokijski Kodokan wciąż przyciąga turystów, ludzi sportu i pasjonatów judo. Starojapońska szermierka Tenchin Shoden Katori Shintoryu nauczana jest od kilkuset lat według tego samego kanonu, Jednym z wybitnych mistrzów tej szkoły był Yoshio Sugino 1904 do 1998, 10. dan. Autor poznał go we Francji na letnich stażach szkoleniowych, gdzie mógł studiować bezpośrednio pod jego kierunkiem. Miałem ten wielki zaszczyt i przywilej. Jego obecność mistrza Sugino przyciągała do miejscowości Lagorde koło La Rochelle i do Tamsil-Lot niedaleko Bordeaux dziesiątki pasjonatów z Europy oraz między innymi z Kanady. Natomiast stałą siedzibą szkoły mistrza Sugino jest do dziś miasto Kawasaki. Nauczanie w linii przekazu tegoż mistrza nazywane jest Sugino Dojo. Do tegoż dojo w Kawasaki podróżują do dziś instruktorzy z Francji, Niderlandów, Włoch, także z Polski. Aczkolwiek obecnie za nauczanie odpowiada mistrz Yukihiro Sugino, syn mistrza Yoshio Sugino. Szkoła Jiu-Jitsu und Karate Schule Lothar Sieber w Monachium jest kwaterą główną stylu Zendo Karate Taite Tao i systemu Idokan. Działa od roku 1975. Nauczanie prowadzą Grandmaster Lothar Sieber, 10. dan, pani Hannelore Sieber i ich asystenci. Tu na zdjęciu pan Lothar III, z prawej pani Hannelore IV. Może jeszcze kogoś państwo potrafią tutaj rozpoznać. Ćwiczą tu ludzie z różnych krajów, głównie Niemcy, Turcy, Francuzi, także Polacy i Rosjanie. Wielokrotnie szkołę tę odwiedzali mistrzowie sztuk walki z kilku krajów azjatyckich, mianowicie z Chin, Indii, Japonii, Korei, także ze Stanów Zjednoczonych. Sztuki walki nauczane w tej szkole są względnie mało znane. To też zachowują cenną dla koneserów elitarność. Nauczane tu jiu-jitsu i karate akcentuje skuteczność w samoobronie. Jaido to sztuka dobywania samurajskiego miecza, czy też szabli japońskiej. Jest pielęgnowaniem dawnej tradycji. Ponadto osoby zainteresowane mogą poznawać dodatkowo medycynę sztuk walki. Główny nauczyciel jest tu głównym magnesem dla uczniów ćwiczących regularnie w stałych grupach i dla dojeżdżających okresowo studentów turystów. Lothar Sieber jest także zapraszany do wielu krajów w roli nauczyciela sztuk walki. Podsumowanie i wnioski. Szanowni Państwo, skąd wynika atrakcyjność mistrza dla uczniów? Być może z autentyczności zarówno mistrzostwa, jak i nauczanej sztuki walki. Przywołani tu mistrzowie Choi Sai i Zasaye Nao, Chen Wangting, Ip Man i Yoshio Sugino kodyfikowali i przekazywali klasyczne techniki walki. Z kolei reformatorami i modyfikatorami starszych systemów byli Jigoro Kano i Bruce Lee. Kate Kerspecht i Lothar Sieber są kreatywni, rozwijając sztuki walki i nauczając na wysokim poziomie. Jest to doceniane przez wielu ich uczniów. Nauczyciel i uczniowie potrzebują się wzajemnie. Zwłaszcza otwarte szkoły i organizowanie otwartych szkoleń służy zwiększaniu ilości uczniów i wzrostowi popularności. Z drugiej strony, jeżeli prowadzenie szkoły sztuk walki stanowi hobby, a nie jest głównym źródłem utrzymania, mistrz nie musi starać się o pozyskanie większej ilości uczniów. Dla sukcesu komercyjnego i udziału w rynku turystyki sztuk walki ważna jest oczywiście liczba studentów turystów przyjeżdżających do szkoły mistrza lub na seminaria, staże przez niego prowadzone. Natomiast dla budowania szkoły i organizacji zapewne ważniejsze jest, aby dobrze wyszkolić przyszłych mistrzów nauczycieli. Lata współpracy mistrza z uczniem mogą być tego wskaźnikiem. Obydwa te parametry dają obraz atrakcyjności mistrza jako magnesu w turystyce sztuk walki. Ja tutaj, widzą Państwo, bawię się w misia pandę na terenie ośrodka Shaolin kilka lat temu. Jeszcze może troszkę bibliografii, z której tutaj korzystałem, przygotowując to wystąpienie. I na dzisiaj byłoby pewnie tymczasem tyle. Bardzo Państwu dziękuję za uwagę.
Okay, we will thank Professor when he joined us. However, now is the time for Q&A section, and I see that there are some questions, but we will start with a question to Professor Green. So, dear Professor, did you come across such invented terminology in the case of Muay Thai, Pencak Silat, for example? Are these martial arts still too late known for us to learn and rework such terms? Thank you.
That's a good question, and somewhat difficult ones. Muay Thai is certainly something that, because of its popularity as an inclusion in the bag of tricks of mixed martial arts, has seen some westernization, and of course we've dropped things like music and on and on and on and on. The terms like crew are still used pretty much in the same way, and I'm not claiming to be an expert in Muay Thai at all. In Silat, I see that and when we're talking about Silat, of course, we're talking about hundreds of different things, but I see that those that have remained close to the village have, there's relatively little change, with some that are becoming more internationalized, and there's an attempt to spread them more than there is the effort to make them more compatible with some of the hierarchies that we see in the martial arts that are more familiar to us. But those are comments based not on intensive study of the terminology used in the two, but just my impression off the top of my head. That's a slang term that translates without simply meaning without reading about it, preparing, and doing field work. I would say that in terms, if we're comparing them to some of the Japanese or Japanese-inspired arts that we see in the West, the movement toward the use of these native terms in a new context is a little bit slower. It may eventually catch up to the ones that I discussed today. It's not a very good answer, but that's the truth as I can give it to you today.
Okay, thank you, Professor, so much for answering this question. And I want to thank Professor Cynarski, who already joined us. But now I will go with a question for Dr. Stefania, as this is the next I have on my list. So, did the actress of Hong Kong duck movies learn martial arts privately or specifically to act in films of this type?
Actually, they have to start practicing martial arts or wushu, let's say, in that time, or also some acrobatics when they wanted to perform, to participate in such huge production, like for example Gordon Harvest or Shaw Brothers industry. Actually, there was two ways. One of them was easy because when they were, for example, when those women, those young girls graduated the Beijing opera schools, it was easy for them because let's say the martial arts or some elements of acrobatic martial arts was simply a part of the program of Beijing Opera, and it was just simply, a natural continuation for them to start practicing martial arts after they signed the contract with, for example, Shaw Brothers, because the Shaw Brothers industry, Shaw Brothers producers demand this in the contract that if they want to cooperate, they have to accept the conditions, and one of the conditions was that they had to prepare to the role that they are going to play. So one of those conditions could be, for example, or some usually was, that they have to start practicing martial arts. They have to start, for example, learning one weapon, like a sword, or just mastering the sword, mastering the spear, or do some more acrobatics, for example. So that was the easy way when they've got some backgrounds, like, for example, being a ballet dancer or classical dancer, or just like I said, the Beijing Opera graduated student. The second way was a little bit more difficult because some of them were, for example, only dancers. So they had to practice more, and they started practicing a new form of moving. Yes, in the martial arts, and the wushu is something a little bit different, with different rhythm, with different sequences of moves. So it wasn't easy, but they were really sometimes they were really desperate, because if they wanted to participate in huge new entertainment, they really had to start it. And actually all of them did it because they wanted to be a heroine, an actress of the new wave. Besides, there is also one more thing. Most of them, or some of them, let's say, I'm thinking also about, for example, Cynthia Khan or Angelique, sorry. I will check once again because I've got one more example of the woman. I was checking this question before I got an opportunity to answer. Not Angela Mao, Moon Lee, for example, was also one of those actresses who were the girls from the Beijing Opera School. In 50s and 60s, the Beijing Opera wasn't so popular. So they've got a new chance. They've got the chance to change their specialization, because just like I said, the Beijing Opera wasn't so popular. The main subject of the let's say the performance of Beijing Opera was changing, because it was also the times of the Communist Party. So it goes to the some changes also in social situation, and the performance, some arts related to traditional China, to traditional kings and emperors, wasn't so popular. So also those girls have to choose. They will start learning something new, and they will have the chance to exist in this world of artists, or they will have to quit and stay, let's say, in the past with the Beijing Opera times that they were passing by at that moment. So yes, they usually have to start practicing martial arts. Jeszcze tak może, nie wiem, jeśli mogę, to króciutko po polsku, bo widziałam tam też głosy, że po polsku fajnie by było, żeby coś się odbywało. Pytanie dotyczyło właśnie, czy kobiety czy młode dziewczyny musiały się uczyć chińskich sztuk walki, jeśli chciały występować w filmach. Tak, bardzo często musiały się tego nauczyć, ale bardzo też często bywało tak, że miały już solidne podstawy zapewnione im przez rodziców. Niektóre dziewczęta pochodziły z rodzin, w których przynajmniej jedno z rodziców było związane ze środowiskiem na przykład opery pekińskiej. Było im łatwiej wtedy po prostu w ogóle wejść jakby w to środowisko artystyczne, ukończyć szkołę, która sama w sobie była dość prestiżowa i wymagająca, a także zawierała elementy akrobatyki sportowej, znaczy dzisiaj nazywamy to akrobatyką sportową, wtedy były to po prostu elementy właśnie akrobatyczne, związane jakby z pewnymi scenami czy z pewnymi sekwencjami, które są powtarzalne w klasycznym repertuarze opery pekińskiej. Wtedy było im łatwiej, bo te podstawy w jakiś sposób miały. Jeśli były tancerkami, a wiele z nich miało też wcześniej ukończoną szkołę baletową, bo to należało też do takiego, powiedzmy, pakietu podstawowego dziewcząt pochodzących z rodzin artystycznych albo tych, których rodzice dbali o ich rozwój w tym czasie, zwłaszcza jeżeli wybierały się do Hongkongu, to było im łatwiej. Takie wytwórnie jak na przykład Show Brothers bardzo często w kontraktach wymagały od kobiet, które zostały zauważone, od młodych dziewcząt, które zostały zauważone, żeby podpisując kontrakt zobowiązywały się również do podjęcia nauki danego stylu. Czasami to dany film na przykład, do którego ewentualnie zostałyby zaangażowane, wymagał od nich osiągnięcia jakiejś biegłości w danym stylu, czy na przykład w danej broni. Stąd wspomniany przeze mnie chiński miecz jako taka broń, która dość popularna była właśnie w filmach Wuxia i którą kobiety często wybierały, no ze względu też na to, że jest może taki argument trochę nienaukowy, ale bardzo kobieca. Jest bardzo trudną bronią miecz, jest bardzo wymagającą, ale rzeczywiście w filmach czy w opowieściach ludowych związanych z Niusia, z kobietami wojowniczkami, jest to broń przypisana im. Także przez opowieści ludowe, przez baśnie ludowe, przez taki tradycyjny ludowy przekaz. Więc tak, musiały się często podejmować tego i traktowały to po prostu jako szkolenie w pracy. Dlatego na przykład Angela Mao uznaje ten etap w życiu za skończony. Uważa, że to była fajna praca, że było to ciekawe doświadczenie, ale tylko jedno z wielu. Natomiast inne nadal w tym żyją i nadal czują się właśnie w tym dobrze, odnalazły się, przyjęły warunki, nauczyły się, zostały mistrzyniami. Dziękuję.
My też dziękujemy za odpowiedź po polsku and we thank you for your answer in English. And now I will have a question for Professor Cynarski. However, I will ask you in both English and Polish so that we will be able to translate it to English in comments. Dzień dobry jeszcze raz, panie profesorze. Mamy tutaj pytanie. Czy spotkał się pan profesor z pomnikami kobiet wojowniczek albo jakimiś formami ich uhonorowania w podobny sposób, jak w wypadku istotnych męskich postaci sztuk walki? Może pan odpowiedzieć po polsku, a my przetłumaczymy później tą odpowiedź w komentarzach po angielsku. Nie słyszymy się jeszcze.
Jest. Witam Państwa serdecznie. Dziękuję za umożliwienie mi tutaj wystąpienia. I drodzy Państwo, powiem tak, teraz bardzo szybko staram się szukać w pamięci, czy rzeczywiście taki pomnik, no, w drodze moich poszukiwań i tej, powiedzmy, turystyki sztuk walki, czy znalazł się na mojej drodze, ale w tym momencie gdzieś nie przypominam sobie niestety. Najczęściej postaci wojowników, takich właśnie zdecydowanie męskich, są właśnie prezentowane czy to w ośrodku Shaolin, czy to w wielu miejscach, gdy tak jak w moim tutaj referacie przywoływałem i demonstrowałem na zdjęciach mistrza Jigoro Kano i przesławnego Bruce'a Lee. Natomiast niestety bardzo możliwe, że takie są, ale przykro mi, nie przypominam sobie, abym gdzieś widział pomnik mistrzyni sztuk walki, czy jakieś inne upamiętnienie tego rodzaju. Także jeżeli ktoś z Państwa natrafił na takie właśnie upamiętnienie, to też z ciekawością wysłuchałbym informacji, gdzie to jest i co to jest dokładnie. Dziękuję.
Dobrze, ja przetłumaczyłam tę odpowiedź tak pokrótce. Dziękujemy. Thank you. I translated the answer to English in comments, so you can take a look if you want to. There is also another person saying about the book written by the professor. I think that the questions are over for today. So this is probably the end of the first day of the third Chinese Martial Arts Congress. Dear Scientific Committee, thank you so much for being with us today and for your help. The recording will be available on our Facebook page and University of Wrocław Sinology Students Club page too. And there is also a schedule of the next day's speeches, and we will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. So see you tomorrow and thank you for participation. Dziękujemy jeszcze raz za to, że całe tutaj grono, nasz komitet naukowy był z nami. Wszystkie zapisy dzisiejszych wystąpień są dostępne online i zapraszamy na spotkania kolejne jutro od godziny 10 rano.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.